All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. This is our third Michigan Investor Group meeting. We call it MIG for those who are new. I'm really glad you're here. I think we're going to have a good time tonight. I think we have a pretty excellent presenter, and a couple of just things off for first. We're going to have Andrew's presentation about investing in mobile home parks, and we're going to have a shorter presentation from myself that'll be much shorter and probably much less entertaining about some different topics in the space, and then we'll have some Q&A time, and then obviously time afterwards to talk to Andrew or others. We have a few other mobile home park people in the group tonight, so we should have some opportunities for making connections. Just so you know, we have 3 other MIG events planned for 2019 so far. We're going to have a life settlements. We're going to have a meeting on life settlements, which is a very unique investment class, on January 30th. And then later on in the year, we're going to have another real estate related session that's going to focus on, how to analyze real estate investments, the wording and the metrics and how real estate people kind of talk about returns and that kind of stuff, their profit, returns, and costs. And then I believe we're going to have a meeting talking about self-storage facilities later on in the spring also. So we got those 3 things queued up, and more ideas are percolating, and I'd love to hear people's ideas or thoughts too in that regard. So, mobile home parks. Really? Yeah, really. We're going to talk about mobile home parks tonight, and I'm glad you're here. And just a little bit of background. In August 2017, I got referred to a mobile home park investment fund. Had never thought about the space, never heard about the space. And to be honest, I just totally took the advice of a person that I trusted who referred it and made a relatively modest investment. Didn't think about it hardly at all, The fund paid distributions for, I guess, four quarters now, and pretty much on track to what they kind of predicted, and that's good. And then back in July, I'm in my office here at Overform, and my father, Mike, walks in, and he says, "Hey, have we ever looked at mobile home parks as an investment?" And I was like, "Well, no, but we made an investment in mobile home that he wasn't aware of." But I hadn't really looked at it, or thought about it much. But I thought, well, maybe we should look at this a little bit. And so just started, researching it, finding podcasts, finding some reading material, and seemed pretty intriguing, from that initial survey. Then I'm listening to one of these real estate investing podcasts. There's only 2 really. There's 2 that are probably the main ones. And I heard an interview about this guy from Florida. And this guy from Florida talked about buying a mobile home park in Ohio, moving to Ohio to live in a mobile home in the park for about 2 months, working on site to turn it around, improve the operations, get rid of some of the riffraff, enforcing park rules, cleaning up the park, bringing in used mobile homes to fill some vacant pads, and finally handing over the day-to-day operations to an on-site manager. And I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of the type of person that might be good to try to invest with. A person who's willing to, do something like that. And so that man, Andrew Keel, is here tonight to talk with us. And Andrew's going to share with us about his experiences buying and operating mobile home parks. I'm going to talk a little bit about different ways to invest in the space, and then we'll have some Q&A. So, welcome, Andrew.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Real quick, Who knows someone that has lived in a mobile home park? By a raise of hands. So mostly everybody in the room. 51% of working Americans make less than $30,000 a year. So the demand for this space is off the charts. Why mobile home parks? There's some sheets on some of the tables. I want to go through the top 10 reasons why to invest in mobile home parks. Number one, and my favorite reason, is because it has some of the highest rates of returns out of any form of rental real estate. That's fantastic. I started out in single family and in apartments, and I was telling the story to David. I had a 9-unit apartment complex that was about 40 minutes from my house, and at the same time I had the 67-lot mobile home park 5 states away in Illinois, which was my first park. And I got more calls off of that 9-unit apartment complex for, leaky faucets, door hinges that weren't working, air conditioning units that weren't working, refrigerators that were not cooling. I got more calls off of that 9-unit apartment complex than I got off of the 67-lot mobile home park that was 5 states away. So I instantly made a decision to liquidate that apartment complex and 1031 into another park, because it's just a unique asset class, and a lot of people don't understand the facts that I don't own all of the actual trailers. It's more of a big parking lot, which is great. Number 2 on the list is that it has one of the lowest default rates out of all commercial loans, right behind self-storage. It's number 2, and that's fantastic. I mean, and people think trailer parks and the stigma kind of gets most investors, but it's a fantastic asset class, and from a commercial loan standpoint, it's very attractive as well. Number 3 is a really big reason that I like this asset class. In apartment complex, average turnover on an annual basis is usually 30 to 40%. In mobile home parks, in a park that's primarily tenant owned, that turnover rate is only about 5 to 6%. So your leasing costs, your marketing is a lot less, because people stay longer, and ultimately it's less work and less management. Number 4 is a really big reason, and I was just talking with a couple gentlemen about this before we sat down. There's no new competition from new supply. It's very hard to get a development approved from zoning standpoints, because there's this stigma of not in my backyard. Who wants to live right in front of or near a mobile home park? Not many people want that. So it's very hard to get a mobile home park development approved, and there's mobile home parks across the country that are being redeveloped on a consistent basis. Downtown, really metro areas, there's just a higher and better use for the land that the mobile homes are on. So they're being redeveloped into office buildings or apartment complexes or sky rises. So there's shrinking supply and increasing demand, because affordable housing is obviously a need, a very strong need. Number 5 on here we have is that exactly what I opened up with. The demand is off the charts. 51% of wage earners make less than $30,000 a year, and according to HUD, 3 out of 4 people approved for government housing assistance are turned away due to lack of government funding available. So if you think about that, these are people that are approved for Section 8 housing that are turned away because there's not enough funding available. And when the average apartment rents for over $1,000 a month, it's just the demand is very strong. Number 6 is also a big reason. There's very few competitors or institutional players at this point, and it's highly fragmented. The majority of the owners of mobile home parks are mom and pop owners that, either the property was passed down, from the previous generation, or they've owned it for quite a long time, which is good mainly because they have good equity in the properties. So from a real estate investor standpoint, when you're negotiating someone that has a lot of equity in a property, they're more flexible to do things like seller finance, amongst other things. So you can get some really good deals. let's see here. Number 7, if you're a single family landlord now, you'll know that there's quite a bit of repair and maintenance that goes into upkeeping those properties. And if you fall back on some of that maintenance, it can be extremely costly to catch up. Whether your air conditioning or heating goes bad or your roof goes bad, so that repair and maintenance in mobile home parks passes through onto the tenant, because again, our business model is not to own the homes, but just own the dirt underneath of it. So maintaining the homes, upkeeping them, encouraging a pride of ownership on behalf of the tenants is really important. And that's what we strive for. Number 8 is also just an added perk. Mobile home parks are a known tax shelter. You could read through this paragraph, but basically, without getting too deep into it, the mobile home parks depreciate on average over about 17 years. So, if you think about that, a lot of the cash flow that you're going to be bringing in on a consistent annual basis will be depreciated, which is absolutely fantastic, and that's one of the main reasons I really like this asset class. The major thing, I think, what David was commenting on in the beginning is the stigma of mobile home parks. I'll never forget the first time I approached someone to ask them to invest with me to buy a mobile home park. This was a family friend that coached my little league baseball, and he's by far the wealthiest person my family's known. And I mean, he's got the Ferrari, the Aston Martin, the whole nine, the huge house on the lake, and he's just a really cool guy. He coached, he was always around, coached little league. And I invited him out to lunch, and I said, hey, I have this awesome investment that I really want you to be a part of. And I was showing him my pro formas, and I passed him my documents, and he looked at it for like 5 seconds, and then he handed it back to me, and he said, Andrew, there's no way that I'm investing in a trailer park with you. There's just absolutely no way. And he never looked at it again. And the reason for that was just because of the stigma. People don't think about the business side of it. They don't think about the numbers. They instantly think, oh, trailer park, trailer trash, trailer park boys, 8 Mile. They don't think about the deeper returns and the business model of owning just the land. So it's a unique investment because of that stigma, which really makes it a moated investment, because some people will never enter the space because of it. We talked about supply and demand and how awesome that is in terms of this space. And then number 11 is also really, really fantastic, and this is something that's more recent. There's some really attractive debt options available from some of the big lenders like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and CMBS and others. So you can get really attractive financing, long-term financing on mobile home parks. We're talking 30-year amortizations, very, very low interest rates, non-recourse debt. So that's another reason that I really like this asset class. Next up here, we'll talk a little bit about my story. My father was an entrepreneur since I was a little boy. I mean, he owned everything from vending machine businesses to hurricane shutter businesses and office supply businesses and everything in between while I was growing up. One of his businesses was a hurricane shutter business, and he got that started right around 2006. He took out a second mortgage on our house to invest in this business, and it's directly correlated to the housing market. And throughout Orlando and the Central Florida area, everybody knows that 2008, 2009 was really tough for the whole country, but particularly in Florida, it was extra tough. So that business really didn't, we really had a tough time in the financial crisis, and ended up, foreclosing on our house, going bankrupt, and it was a very tough time for our entire family. I was in school at the time. I was at Augustana University in South Dakota. I played football there, and during my time there, I was at Merrill Lynch, and I was there on September 29th, 2008, which was, at the time, it was the single largest drop in the Dow in a single given day. And I just remember sitting in my little cubicle, which I was, I was just a little intern making copies and doing whatever the financial advisors requested of me. But I just remember the phones would not stop ringing. They were off the hook, and the advisors were stressed, and it was just like it was like a day you would never imagine. It was like Armageddon in that Merrill Lynch office. So I just remember talking to one of the financial advisors after the markets had closed, and he was just describing to me, what had happened that day. And I just immediately, I feel like those events that happened really created a distrust in all millennials, and that day particularly stuck with me. And that's where I started to distrust the traditional markets. I graduated college. I went over to Finland for a short time, and I played American football over there. Had a great time. Came back and had to get a real job to start paying some bills. I marketed and sold websites to Keller Williams real estate agents, and that was my first exposure to real estate. We redesigned websites, talked about SEO, and I traveled actually to over 152 Keller Williams market centers or offices across the country selling websites, and met a lot of investors that were also realtors, and that was my first exposure to real estate as a whole. So I eventually saved up enough money and decided I wanted to go into real estate, and I started out wholesaling and flipping houses in Central Florida. So I'd find properties and fix them up and sell them for a profit, and it was going well for a time, but I realized that I was having these big, ginormous gains in 1 month, and then the next couple of months my income would be nothing. So it was really tough from a budgeting standpoint, and I wanted to get into something that had some recurring revenue to it. And I didn't have a lot of money. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so I went to the least common denominator, which was mobile homes. I found a guy named Lonnie Scruggs on YouTube and just immediately became engulfed with him. He wrote a book called Deals on Wheels, and it talked about buying individual mobile homes inside of parks and fixing them up and selling them on contract. So I bought about 22 of these individual mobile homes. Some of them I bought for as low as $300. Some of them I paid $1,000 for. I did the work myself, would fix them up and sell them on contract, and usually I would be about $1,000 to $2,000 into the deal, and I would sell it for $2,000 down and $250 a month for 4 years. And I did that over and over and developed a good fixed income. And then I met a mobile home park owner that I was buying, and I owned a home in his park, and I was just fascinated by what he was doing, and I thought that I had to be a millionaire to be able to purchase the entire park. I never thought that I could buy a property without my own money. So I invited him out to lunch, sat down with him, and he basically told me and mentored me and said, hey, this is how you can put deals together with investor money to acquire entire parks. And there's better benefits to that, like the depreciation. When you own the real estate, there's tax benefits to that versus owning the actual trailers. So that once that switch was set, I was all in on finding and buying a mobile home park. It took me a while to do the research and training to get myself prepared for that with the due diligence and everything. So I attended some events, I followed podcasts, I read books. One book I read was Trailer Cash by Jamie Smith, and Jamie and her husband Ryan happened to be in the Orlando area. So I read the book in a weekend. I called them, networked with them, and was instantly hooked into what they were doing, which they have a couple of funds that acquire mobile home parks on a very large scale. So I instantly became hooked to mobile home parks, started cold calling and finding deals. And because that's what I was doing when I was wholesaling, is I was able to find off-market deals. That was my forte. I went to an MHU boot camp, which is pretty much the largest educational boot camp in mobile home park investing. It's like a 3-day boot camp. They do a bus tour and you go into several different parks. I've attended it 2 times and I'm going again in January. Very, very intensive. You know, if you want to be an operator, that's a very, very good way to get educated. And at that event, I met some investors that had full-time jobs and just wanted to be passive investors in parks. And at that same time, I found Quail Run, which was my first park that I got under contract, and I literally didn't know where I was going to get the money at all. I got under contract and I sent an email out to everybody that attended the boot camp, and I said, hey, I have this awesome deal. You know, this is my pro forma, this is my business plan, and I luckily had 3 people that were interested in investing with me, and since then I've been able to acquire 545 lots, and we have just under 400 under contract right now that should close in the next 30 to 60 days. So really excited for the future. My wife, Katie, she is my rock. She supports me, and this is actually our first single family house that we ever bought, which is in not the best part of town. It's in Pine Hills, Florida, which if you Google that, you'll probably find some news articles on some shootings and some Grand Theft Auto. And then this is at the boot camp. They do a live bus tour where they go into several mobile home parks and talk about the infrastructure, and it was a very, very good educational event for us. My wife Katie, as I mentioned, and this is our daughter Aria, who is 19 months old. So this is my why. Everybody talks about, you know, why they do things, and we love to have fun, we love to travel and do different things. So this is these girls keep me going and keep me motivated. On my team, I have, you know, now that we've gotten above 500 lots, I've been able to develop you know, a good little team down in Orlando. I have a vice president that helps me with actual projects that, you know, rehab homes and bring homes into parks. Sharon helps out. She does all of our background checks out of the home office. She also pays all the bills and tracks the bills for every park. Diana, she is our best on-site manager that we, you know, paid more and said, hey, we need you to manage the other on-site managers because you're a rock star. She's based out of St. Louis. Rhonda is our senior property manager that basically oversees Diana and all of the on-site managers. And then we have an on-site manager that basically their responsibility is to be our eyes and ears at every property. So they live in the property. Usually they're the tenants that have the nicest homes, and they're the most organized and able to communicate with us. I also have an intern named Joseph. His sole job is to cold call mobile home parks 20 hours a week to find deals, you know, find off-market deals and to, you know, keep sourcing them. So that's a little snapshot of our team. So my goal is to acquire $100 million in mobile home park holdings in the next 5 years. But I also want to keep a good culture. You know, being in corporate America and being in a cubicle with no windows really played a toll on me. So we have a younger group, and we really like bocce ball. So every day for lunch when I'm home, we play bocce ball, and we have Taco Tuesdays and Four Rivers Fridays, which is like our barbecue place that's down the road from the office. So we pride ourselves on that fun stuff. So the business model that I've implemented in our model is basically we will buy properties that are about 60 to 70% occupied, mobile home parks that are 60 to 70% occupied and have some upside potential to them. So the properties that you see in Florida or Arizona that are these really fancy parks with 100% occupancy and really high lot rents, those are really not the properties that I'm looking to purchase. I'm looking to buy properties that have some sort of management deficiency, whether lot rents are low or occupancy is low. And in this sector of mobile home parks, there's actually a lot of mobile home parks that are broken in some aspect because of the fact that there's a lot of these mom and pop owners that have a lot of equity in the properties, so most of them own it free and clear. So if there's a couple homes that are empty, to them, you know, they don't have a mortgage payment breathing down their neck, so they just leave them empty. And you know, usually what I've found in some of the parks that we've purchased is that the mom and pop owners used to do all the rehabs themselves. And at a certain point, you know, when they're 70 years old, they don't do that anymore. And they just kind of let the park just go. They're still making 10 to 20 grand a month off of it, and they kind of just take their foot off the gas. So those are the properties that I want to buy, and I'm trying to get seller financing, trying to get really good terms on those. And then what I'll do is I'll take over and implement professional management. You know, occupancy, collections are really important. Really implement a good management structure where we're holding people accountable if they don't pay rent. We are making them follow the rules. You know, you can't just stack tires out front of your trailer. You can't, you know, today we drove through a park and there was someone had put a stove and a refrigerator right outside their front door, and they had left it there. And it's just, you know, things like that. You have to hold people accountable and issue violations for those types of things. And then what we do after we fix the parks up is we aim to refinance them through some sort of agency debt. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, preferably non-recourse, you know, 30-year fixed rate debt is really what our primary goal is to do. And then we want to hold them. You know, I don't plan on buying, fixing, and selling. You know, I want to hold these for the cash flow long term, and you know, fully depreciate them. So that's my whole business model. And how I fit investors into this is usually I will acquire with initial, you know, down payment money and rehab expenses, and then, you know, fix it up immediately, raise rents, you know, fill it up is, you know, usually to 95% or higher. And then when we refinance, we pay back the investors their initial capital contribution, and then they will still have some equity, you know, after that they will still receive dividends off of. Important questions before investing. You know, these are very specific to the property. You know, if there's a specific mobile home park that you're looking at. Utilities are very important because, again, since we're basically a big parking lot, the utility infrastructure is really going to be your biggest expense. You know, making sure the sewer lines are not backing up, making sure the water lines are not going to freeze in the winter because they're, you know, 12 inches deep instead of the proper depth. Things like that are very important. So due diligence on mobile home parks is actually pretty intensive, and it's something you really have to dive into. City water, city sewer is going to be preferred. If you're looking at a deal with city water, city sewer, that's the ideal situation. I do own parks with well water. The issue with well water is that you're now going to be responsible to the EPA to keep up with the reporting requirements, and you know, since you are servicing, you know, a community, there's some intensive reporting that has to be done, and a full-time well manager that has to come, like, I think it's 2 days a week and manage the well. So that's there's added expense to that and added liability in addition. I had a park under contract in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we got the EPA results, and there had been radon that had been showing up since like 1970 in the parks. So that's a very big issue because, you know, you potentially could be causing cancer to all of your residents, and there's no, you know, statute of limitations on that type of issue. So something to look out for. I'm not trying to scare you all away, but septic tanks. You know, if you're going into private utilities now, septic tanks are something to look out for. Sewer treatment plants are something that I prefer to stay away from. I don't own any parks with sewer treatment plants, just because of the fact that they cost about $500,000 to replace. Lagoon systems, really across the country, the EPA is trying to do away with lagoon systems, just because they're dangerous and you know, not as sanitary. But these are things that you'll see in different deals. One of the most important things is who is paying for the water and sewer services. You know, is it the tenants? Are they being billed back for these utilities? In a lot of parks, again, one of the management deficiencies you'll see is that the park is just including that with lot rent, and they are paying for the water and sewer. So when I see a park that is paying for the water and sewer, I instantly see that as opportunity for upside because I can bill back and decrease expenses on average about 30% right away. We look at the market a lot. You know, there's demand everywhere, but we want to be in a market that usually has a metro of at least 50,000 people to support that. One company that does quite a lot of demographic research is Walmart. So we generally want to be in about 10 miles of a Walmart when we buy, which seems kind of random, but Walmarts and Sonics actually do quite a bit of research on where they plant their locations, and that's just a little niche on where we try to buy. And then the specifics on the parks, you know, and mobile home parks are a value, you know, in terms of their purchase price on the income that they create. So, you know, you want to find out the total number of lots, how many are occupied, how much is lot rent, how many park-owned homes are there, because you want to have as little as possible, but if there are park-owned homes, you know, that's opportunity for you to either renovate and sell those homes, or, you know, just sell them as is and you know, pass that on to a tenant. The NOI, does anybody in here know what NOI stands for? All right, a couple of us. All right, it's net operating income. Cap rate is a capitalization rate. That's a percentage of the net operating income. That's how commercial real estate is valued typically, is off of the income that it is generating. Let's see here. Okay, raising investment. These are the two options that I've used. I have, on my first 5 acquisitions, I partnered with just one equity partner that would bring the funds, and I would be the sweat equity, and we'd acquire the park and, you know, just split it 50-50, and the investor would receive a preferred return on top of that. And then I'm currently working on a group syndication, which is my first one. We're buying a group of 5 mobile home parks in Illinois, and we're syndicating about 14 investors to invest with us. The group syndications are usually for, you know, high dollar amount capital raises. We're raising $1.6 million for the group syndication. When I partnered with the individual partners, that was usually a raise of around $300,000 to $600,000. So it just kind of depends on, you know, the capital you're looking to raise. Here's a quick case study of my first deal that I purchased. This is in Edwardsville, Illinois, which is just outside of St. Louis. It has 67 lots. When we purchased it, it had 58 occupied. It is a septic system and city water that is sub-metered, so it is, you know, the tenants are paying for their utilities. One thing that I learned from this acquisition is that septic tanks and trees don't mix. So going in, you know, we did hire a septic company to come and inspect the tanks. You know, they obviously didn't dig up all of the lateral lines to tell us how many roots were in them, but they did a quick test to see if it basically needed to be pumped or not. But looking back, that's something that's really important, is that the trees and the septic tanks don't mix, because those lateral lines, once they get roots in them, they're just in a really tough spot. We bought this park for $1.34 million. Immediately brought in 9 used homes to fill the vacant lots. I have a knack for finding used homes pretty quickly. Since I was a Lonnie dealer, that's basically what I was doing. So I was all over Craigslist, Facebook, and I found homes, brought them in within the first 3 months. We started billing back the tenants for trash, implemented better management, enforced collections. We implement a no pay, no stay policy across our parks. We give people till the 15th every month. We give people to the 5th, and then past that they have to pay with late fees. But on the 15th, if they haven't paid, we just immediately start the eviction. And we also put in some new LED street lights. The electric bill for the park was about $800 a month when we purchased it. We put in LED street lights, and that dropped below $200 a month. So that savings right there, when you capitalize it at, say, a 9 cap value, it adds up pretty quickly, which is awesome. Here's a picture of the park. As you can see, these are all single wides up top here. These are a couple double wides on the corners. But it's a very nice park. But again, you could see all those trees that I wish weren't there. Second case study, this is Lytle. We actually went to this one today. Drove out there. This is 31 lots, so it's a smaller park. We got a really fantastic deal on this one. At acquisition, there was only 18 occupied homes in the park. We brought in 13 homes right away to get it fully occupied. It's city water and city sewer, and the city actually bills our tenants directly, so we don't even have to read the meters. The city takes care of that, which is fantastic. We bought it for $250,000. We replaced the water main. So initially when we bought it, the park was just paying for the water. And we talked to the city and said, hey, what do we have to do to get you to bill our tenants directly? They said, well, if you replace the water main in the park, we will put our own meters on and bill the tenants individually for their water usage. So that cost us about $35,000 to do, and took our expense ratio from about 40%, which when talking commercial real estate, expense ratios are a percentage of the gross income. So if your total income, your gross income is $100,000 and your expense ratio is 40%, you're going to have about $40,000 in expenses, so $60,000 of net income. On this property, we took our 40% expense ratio and brought it down to around 25% by doing that, which increased the value of the property. This park, the previous owners before we purchased it, they were not running background checks on any of the tenants. So we had about a handful of problem tenants when we took over that just were causing trouble and obviously were slow on paying rent. So we enforced that, and we actually just did a appraisal, just did a refinance on this property. It refinanced at $475, and it's just over $100,000 in annual income now. So it's a really good property for us. Here's a quick little picture of it.
Andrew, when you say it appraised at 475, is that what it appraised at, or is that what kind of LTV do you get off the 475?
Correct, yeah. So we got 75% LTV off of that total value. So this is my favorite park here, not to be biased, but Deer Run is in Salem, Ohio. It's 75 lots. This is the one I actually moved up with my wife and daughter and lived in for 2 months. When we bought this one, we knew that it was in really rough shape. I never forget when I first drove through with my wife, when we drove through the park, she turned and looked at me and she said, "We're really going to live here?" And she, that was the first time that she'd been through a park in a while. But the park was really run down. When we bought it, it only had 40 occupied. And out of that 40, there was only about 30 that were actually paying rent. So, instantly we implemented, a collections policy. It's city sewer, but it had well water. So, that was something we really wanted to keep an eye on, was the well system. Luckily, the well was only 18 months old, so there was a lot of new infrastructure there, which helped out, getting us comfortable with purchasing a property that had a well. The problem was, because the occupancy was so low, it really wasn't bankable. So when we tried to get acquisition financing from some local banks, they immediately shut us down and said, we don't want to loan on a property that's 50% occupied. So that provided an open door for us to negotiate seller financing with really attractive terms, and we got a really good price on it as well. We brought in 7 brand new homes to fill some of the vacant lots. We billed back for trash, implemented better management, enforced collections, put in some new street lights. The park was called Butler Mobile City, and it just had a very weird name. And I think I have a photo here of let me see, I'll show you, but I had a photo of the street sign that it had, and it looked like an old motel sign that was up on a hill, and it just had a weird name. So we changed the name and the branding to Deer Run, and got better morale. And I'll never forget the night before closing, I was in town and I went out to a local restaurant to eat, and I was trying to get information out of the waiter, like, hey, what do you think about the Butler Mobile City Mobile Home Park? And just trying to get some feedback from her, and she's like, "Oh, you don't want to go there. That place is infested with drugs and the worst." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm bringing my wife up here to live in here, and she's really gonna she's really gonna leave me or something if I don't figure this out. So upon changing the name, we got better morale, and the whole community took a liking to it. Let me show you. So this is a picture of it right here. This is an overhead shot. There's some really nice apartments right next door to it that charge about $1,100 a month for rent. So we're very affordable. Lot rent in here is $265 a month. So it's a really good location. Upon my first day, this is literally, I closed and I came back to the park, and the asphalt right here was starting to bubble. And I was like, what is this? What is going on here? I kept stepping on it, and it was like this big bubble. So at the time, this was the maintenance man. He said, yeah, we have a water leak. This is where the water main runs. So my first day was opened up with us digging up asphalt to go down about 24 inches and find the water main to repair a leak. So definitely was a interesting project for my first day on the job. Does anybody in here know what this is?
Manhole.
This is a lift station tank. This park has its own lift station in the very back. This is actually where all of the sewer water drains into and then is pumped up to the front of the park where the city line is. So I had to figure out maintenance on this, and that was something I never had done before. So something that, again, was a surprise upon purchasing it, because it's actually like hidden in the back of the park. Like there was like leaves over it and trees in front of it. So I didn't know I had one of these until the first day. Yeah, so here's the old Buffalo City sign here. You can see that it kind of was a little run down. So we literally ran it over with the tractor and upgraded to a new look. And this one has some nice lights on it, so it lights up at night. And it was a fun project. I actually built this myself, the little surround here, which I got a couple quotes that were like $2,500 to do that, which looking back, it probably was worth it to do that. But I thought at the time, I was like, that's way too expensive. I'll just go to Lowe's and buy the blocks myself, and the things you learn working on mobile home parks. But this is my daughter Aria, so she was out helping me build the nice landscaping surround. It's like our little entranceway there. We put in some nice white vinyl fencing on the entranceway here. So I did actually live in this front house in the front of the property. So I can't vouch for what David said, that I lived in an actual mobile home. So we lived in the front house, which was actually nice, and it's a little bit separated from the park, but it was nice that we were on site every day to see the progress and things like that. But the fencing kind of is a very welcoming, welcoming something new for people to get morale up. There's some pictures as well. Again, that's more of the branding. And there were some buildings over here that were just filled with just odds and ends stuff. So we subsectioned them off and rented them out to people within the first week. People in the park, they're each rented out for about $125 a month. So that was just additional income that we didn't even plan on bringing in. So upon purchasing the park, we had a lot of homes that we brought in, and I was worried about marketing. So I got several different signs, and bandit signs from my wholesaling days was something that I was very prone to. So this is a major highway right here on it's between Salem and Alliance, Ohio. So I had some nice signage there. We have speed bumps, but for some people, they don't mind flying over them and ruining their suspension system. So we try to get some nice signs to get people to slow down. Here's some other signage that we installed in the park, just making it look better after years of nothing. One thing we did that was pretty cool is we installed a dog park. I went out to MHI, which is a Manufactured Housing Institute, puts on a big convention every year out in Las Vegas. And they said that one of the top amenities that is very affordable to build, but provides the most bang for your buck is a dog park. So as part of our change of the morale and to bring people into the community, we built a dog park, and it was actually very affordable. You can go online and get these signs already pre-made for very inexpensive, and we were able to implement that, and it helps us pull a lot of residents from different parks and different apartments that never would have even looked at this community when it had its old reputation. These are some of the LED lights we installed. I mean, these save a ton of money. This is kind of one of my unique value propositions is putting these LED lights in, because if you look at your actual electric expense every month, you can bring it down considerably by switching to these LED lights that literally cost 68 bucks. So it's something that I like to do in all the parks. One thing that we did, my vice president's mom is she's an artist, and since we were up there for 2 months, she offered to, if I paid for her flights to come up, she said she would paint us something, because right when you come into the park, there's this nice big open wall. So we saw it as a canvas, and she came up and she painted this beautiful mural that has some mountains and a waterfall, and this is me just putting clear coat over it, but it looks like I'm the one painting it. So that's why I put this photo in here, but she gets all the credit. So the dirty parts of the job would definitely be the harder things that we have to do. Is managing contractors to rehab some of the older homes. Some of these homes are literally 50 years old, and they just a lot of the subfloor will just be rotted. So one thing that kills a mobile home is moisture. So if there's a roof leak or there's water that gets into the floors, that's really what will kill one of these, and you just have to demolish it. But if the roof is fine and there's not moisture in the walls, you can rehab pretty much anything. So this is one where the floors were just completely rotted. So we had to pull up this OSB board and install plywood to get more life out of it. But this is just a cool little action shot of the kitchen. So once we finish the homes, we will put some nice branding on it, put it up on Craigslist, and you'd never believe how many people reached out off of that photo when I put it up on Facebook Marketplace. There was literally over 500 people that reached out to rent that home for $450 a month. So, and that's an old home. That's probably a 1960s home, but we have such strong demand, it really helps us.
What'd you have in it?
We had in that one about 3,000. So, and that one just came with the park. So it wasn't anything but a little carpet and paint. These are some of the new homes that we brought in. There's some really good financing options through some of the new manufacturers. So we really like legacy homes. So we brought in 7 homes and installed those into the park, which is a really nice value add, because every home that we bring into our park and occupy adds about $30,000 of value to the value of the property. So it's really valuable for us when we're buying the homes for around $30,000, but we can rent out those homes for about $650 a month, which will pay the debt and then cash flow considerably. Last case study here is Mahoning Manor. This park is in Punxsutawney. Yes, the home of Punxsutawney Phil, the Groundhog Day fans. This park, the reason I wanted to mention this one is it didn't have a lot of upside as some of the other parks. When we bought it, there was only 3 empty lots. This one was already sub-metered, city water, city sewer. So we brought in 3 homes to fill the vacant lots. But really the key thing that we did in this park is that the seller that was selling us the park, he was billing the tenants back incorrectly based off of the city's water and sewer charges. So he was only collecting about 1/3 of what the actual expense was for the water and sewer. So when we figured out those equations and started billing back the correct amount, our expenses decreased, and we were able to recapture some of that. Also, the lot rent was very low compared to the market. So one thing we do in due diligence is we call all the mobile home parks around, like usually the 10 mobile home parks closest to the park, and we find out how much they charge for lot rent. So in this park, lot rent's closer to $315 a month, and he was only charging $150 a month. So we're at $257 right now, and we plan to go up to market of $315 a month, which is very easy to do. Just increasing lot rent, usually once a year is what our plan is, and by doing that, it increases the value of the property, considerably. So there's not a lot of cash outlay to get that value increase, which is what we like. And here's a photo of Mahoning Manor. So my next project that I'm working on is a step up from some of the other properties that I've acquired. We're buying a 5-park portfolio in Illinois. The parks are in the Illinois Valley, which contains Ottawa, Illinois, Mendota, Peru, and Earlville, Illinois. So these 5 parks is a total of 222 lots. They're about 30 minutes apart from each other, which is nice because they're still relatively close. Currently, it's owned by some mom and pop owners. Occupancy is about 70 to 75%, so it's very low. But they don't have a lot of debt on the property, and they're not really worried about maximizing it right now. So we plan on coming in fully capitalized to increase occupancy to 95% or higher. And also, we called around, and lot rents are very low in all 5 of the parks. So we're able to recapture some of the upside by them not having lot rent at the market rate. This is our first syndication, so we actually just sent out the PPM, Private Placement Memorandum documents today, and that process has been pretty smooth. There's just some back and forth with the attorneys, but this is our next step, the direction we're going in. So my conclusion is, mobile home park investing is rewarding. It's not rocket science, but it is hard work. Keeping up with the managers, collections, occupancy, things like that. You have to be willing to manage people and manage your time correctly. One thing about mobile home park investing is it'll definitely make you the topic of conversation at cocktail parties. If I could tell you how many, different get-togethers I'm at, and once someone brings up, asking what you do, it's like there's just a bunch of people that flock over and want to learn about it because again, there's this stigma of, trailer parks and nobody, thinks about it from a business standpoint. But it also has brought financial freedom to my family, and that's something I'm really appreciative for because, we're able to, live a good life and not have to, be in the rat race, right? From our cash flow game we played last night. But mobile home park investing has changed my life for the better, and it is fun. So this is my contact information. If you want to chat about anything specifically, you can check out our website. But does anybody have any questions at all? Yes, sir.
You were talking about in your paper that you can't depreciate the land,
Yes.
but you can depreciate the improvements.
Mm-hmm.
What's the kind of average depreciable value per lot?
So I'm not sure per lot, but it's usually about 75 to 80% of the total purchase price because of the infrastructure, the signage, the fencing. We got a cost segregation firm that came out and did a whole report on Quail Run, which is in Edwardsville. I mean, they are calculating a certain a certain linear footage per water line, per sewer line. Anything that is an improvement to the land, we're able to depreciate. So, not sure of the per lot number.
So, but for example, the Mahoning deal.
Yes.
I ran a quick number on 880 divided by 61 lots. That's 14.4. So maybe $10,000, in kind of
Yeah,
envelope numbers would be a depreciable value.
yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate.
And it's 17-year depreciation.
It's 17 year, yes, sir, on average.
Or first year,
Pardon me?
or first year depreciation.
Well, yeah.
With some of the bonus depreciation, yeah. So, anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir.
What is your liability for, if you have a park that has kind of rough crowd at the park, what's your liability for crimes they commit and things like that? Are you liable for anything? Do you need special insurance for that?
Yeah, so we just have a general insurance, general liability insurance policy over the park. We usually get 1 million per occurrence, 2 million aggregate. But in regards to if someone does something specific, in the park, we're not liable, for what the person's actions. But it would just be for any sort of, gross negligence. Yes, sir.
So, I guess I was a little confused, because I thought you started out saying that we just owned the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
But then it sounded like, you're showing us pictures of fixing up homes and all that sort of thing, so you own more than just the dirt.
Correct. Yep.
So, in a typical park, how many homes would you own in that park?
Yeah, so I don't want to own any of the homes. If it was like the perfect scenario, I wouldn't. But what happens is when I purchase a park, usually the sellers, to increase their income or something, have some park-owned homes that they've done straight rentals on, or they've done like a rent-to-own contract on. So when we acquire the parks, some of them will just be empty. So what we'll do is, if there's like a straight rental, we'll encourage the tenant to get on like a rent-to-own program where they can make payments and eventually become an owner, and then their payments will drop to just lot rent. And we have very good turnover by doing programs like that. But on the vacant homes, we need to do something to them to make them sellable. So we will rehab them and then try to sell them for cash if we can. I mean, if we put $5,000 into a mobile home, we'd like to get $5,000 out of it at least, because when we get that home occupied, again, it adds about $30,000 of value onto the value of the total park. So that exchange is really worth it in the long run, which is unique.
So how does the eviction process work when I'm evicting somebody who owns a trailer on the land that I have?
This is one of the best parts. So when we evict someone from the park, we're evicting the individuals that are living in the home. And then, so that's a whole process. It differs per state, but it's usually around 30 days. We'll have someone move out. And then there's another 30-day process to evict the home from the park. So it's not like a traditional eviction at an apartment or a house where you got to put all the stuff at the curb and they have time to move it. But they'll have 30 days to get that home removed off of your park, off of your property. And if they don't, then you could put in a request for the title, and then you become the owner of the home. So then when you become the owner of the home, you can fix it up and sell it, and you have title, so you can do with it what you please.
You want to talk about the cost of relocating the mobile home for like people? So
That's a really good point.
We're not going to move it.
Yeah, so the reason a lot of people, if they can't pay $300 for lot rent, they're not going to be able to afford, the $3,000 to $5,000 it costs to move one of these things. Even if you move a mobile home from, say this side of the room over to this side of the room, it's going to cost about $3,000 because of all the utility hookups, the blocks, skirting, tie down, everything. So it's very expensive to move these things, and that makes it really beneficial for us. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Andrew, can you add, can you rezone, add pads, increase the occupancy?
Definitely. It's in some markets it's easier to do than in others. Some markets, if you have a vacant land next to your park, you can go through the zoning process to be able to expand, and add more lots. But more often than not, it's a very cumbersome process, and it's hard to do.
You bring
And
utilities and everything.
you got to bring utilities, and a lot of municipalities again don't want to promote the low-income housing They don't want to promote that additional, mobile home park tenants in the community, because another factor is taxes, right? If you look at the taxes of a mobile home park and what the municipality generates from a tax standpoint, it's very low, because these types of tenants, excuse me, when they get sick, they generally end up going to the ER, and they don't have health insurance, so their expenses usually get. Let me grab a drink real quick. I got one bottle. So they generally, from a tax standpoint, the taxes on a mobile home are like $30 per year. They're very low. So, in the park, you're basically, paying taxes for the land. So you get benefits. We get benefits, but the city and municipality does not. They actually lose a lot of money compared to having a single-family development, getting the property taxes off of all of those.
So it's not just not in my backyard, or I don't like it, or a stigma, it's like economics. And that's the biggest driver of everything, is economics. So
Mhm.
the cities, a lot of cities, townships won't even let you expand if you own the land. They'll be like, you know what, this is a grandfathered zoning. They try to keep you, if someone moves off the pad, they try to stop you from bringing a new mobile home on the pad, on
Mhm.
your park.
On your own park,
So
yeah.
there is no supply, none, in this market.
Yeah.
So Andrew,
Yes, sir.
the trailer itself is personal property, correct? And then
Correct.
the land is real estate, so they have two different taxable values. Is that correct?
That's
Can you
correct.
Detail that out, because I think it goes back to Bill's question.
Yeah, so like the mobile homes have a title just like a car. So you go to the DMV to get a title and you pay your taxes, it's a different, it's personal property versus the real estate, for the whole parcel, that's what the park pays. So that's, the difference in the tax values.
Could I comment a little bit about Michigan specifically, because there's some nuances about that, is, so the personal property, you pay 6% sales taxes if you were buying a car, the buyer of the home does. The property owner pays our normal property tax. But in Michigan, there's a law that the property owner has to pay $3 per month for occupied home for school tax, which the Michigan Mobile Home Association is very proud of. They lobbied to get this law because, again, it's just very low, $3 per home, per month, for a home that's occupied.
Maybe we should change that.
No, please don't.
But that's a good point.
To your point about why cities don't really like them is because, typically the homes are occupied by people with children. They use the schools, but their contribution to the schools. very
Yeah, the
small.
cost.
Cities typically, they
Exactly.
probably
Yeah, the cost to
Yeah.
educate, a child through the system per year, I think, is several thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And if
we pay 36.
you're
for
paying
the
$36,
per
for that.
year. Yeah.
So it's just economics. Yes, sir.
You talked about the no pay, no stay, and upping the rent, and changing the garbage fees, and pushing back on utilities. What kind of contracts are in place, and how do you adjust those to make all those things happen?
Yeah, so usually it's month to month, and that's beneficial from, the landlord's standpoint, because you're able to make those changes pretty quickly. But a lot of parks we've bought, there's no written contracts. It's just like mom and pop, I'm gonna come on, knock on your door every month, and you're gonna hand me the cash, and, that's what I'm buying from, is those type of sellers. So when I come in, I'm implementing, leases and set rules and, enforcing them to have signed contracts with us so that we can hold them accountable to the rules and regulations, which in some parks are non-existent.
You say month to month, it's like a 12-month contract, right?
It's a 30-day contract.
Really?
Yeah, but it auto-renews, so it's just a consistent,
There would be no reason to put a 12-month in place, and you've got their house sitting in your.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
yeah.
Month-to-month contract that automatically renews. So if the person's going along automatic renewing and you change some of the terms of the contract, how the hell are they gonna be, you're gonna point it out to them in an email or what?
Well, usually, what our attorneys have us do is get a signed document from them that says, hey, there's an amendment to the lease. But that's only if we usually increase rent. you know, we just say, hey, rent's going up, and we'll give them the proper notice, and that's the only time we have to do that. Yes, sir.
Andrew, any thought about demographic targeted parks? Like just a senior-only park, for instance? or-
Yeah, so I mean,
He's
senior.
looking for a place.
Summer home.
Yeah.
They're gonna take his.
I mean, down in Florida, you know, where around, there's a lot of communities, 55 and older communities, and I've seen the statistics on the number of baby boomers that retire every day, and it's staggering. But there's extremely high demand for those senior-only, amenity-rich parks down around the Orlando area where I live, and you know, it's a different business model than mine, where I'm focused on all-age communities. But I mean, Sam Zell, Equity Lifestyle. I mean, that's where he's made his money in the manufactured housing space is through that niche, and it's worked out really well for him.
There's no problem with discriminating on age,
It has to be in the deed restrictions. I don't know a lot of specifics about it, but I know that you're allowed to do, you know, the 55 and older, you know, niche.
Dave, 4 years from now, he could be our operator on site.
He'll be looking for a job.
Have you looked at, do you think about geographic restriction, or are you just wide open anywhere in the US wherever there's a deal?
I do have some restrictions, like I don't want to buy in New York or California, but you know, genuinely anything else in between that is good for me.
That seems less geographic than maybe political.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yes, sir.
So you list improved management as a big factor. It sounds like that's a pretty critical portion. So what's your process for identifying the people that are going to do that? And then I'm assuming you've had to change people out at some point. So what's the process for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we come in, we usually are understanding that management's been poor, so we're going to have to make an on-site manager change, if there was even an on-site manager to begin with, because a lot of parks, the owner lives in town or, you know, lives nearby. So we'll look for the tenants that have the nicest homes already, that are taking care of their property, and we'll just go talk to them. And like in Salem, when I was there, literally went door to door, you know, knocking and talking to people, which is not typical, but you know, usually we'll go to the homes that are, you know, the better kept homes, and just talk to them and see if, you know, they would be a good candidate, and you know, if they have the technology abilities to, you know, email and things like that. If we don't find anybody, you know, that route, we'll actually send out a letter to all the tenants that say, hey, we're hiring a new manager. You know, if you're interested in applying, please email us, you know, a PDF of your resume, and you know, we'll go from there, and we'll have a handful of people that reach out. Yeah, go ahead.
Today, you were sharing with me how the on-site people are kind of like just the eyes and ears,
Mm-hmm.
and you have your team back in the head office.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that a little bit? That kind of handles the strategic and the main.
Yeah, so we try to handle as much decision making and where the money goes from the home office. So really the on-site manager is just going to tell us, hey, so-and-so has a refrigerator out in their front yard, or so-and-so is changing their oil in the front yard and it's been 2 months and the car's still on blocks, you know. So we just need someone that can communicate with us and is, you know, and has a nicer home, so they want to see the park improve because it's better for their value of their home. And we every month on the 15th, the managers take a drive-through video of the park, upload it to YouTube, and send us the link. And then from the home office, we'll analyze that video and say, okay, lot 10 needs a violation for trash out front of their home, or lot 3 hasn't mowed their grass. We need to issue them a violation for that. So that's kind of that process. Yes, sir.
Who hires and fires contractors for maintenance?
That would be myself or John, who's my vice president. He's basically, that's all he does is the projects. So at any given time, we probably have, you know, probably 10 to 20 rehabs going on. So he's monitoring those, keeping in touch with the contractors, and that's the toughest part, is managing those rehabs. And that's the one thing that we like to be on site for. So if we're going to manage it from afar, we're going to go out there every couple of weeks to check on the contractor just to make sure that, you know, he's doing what he's saying that he's doing, because we've had some bad experiences with contractors, because the problem is, you if you want to go hire a general contractor and say, hey, we want to, we're okay with paying a premium. We'd like to hire you to rehab 25 mobile homes in our park. You can call every general contractor in the area, and they're not going to want to work with you because they have bigger projects going on and they don't want to work on mobile homes, quite frankly. So you're forced to work with more of the handyman type of contractors, and that's one of the struggles we have is finding the good guy that's going to be honest and do good work. But out of we find a couple, and we stick with them and pay them good, and they stick around. Yes, sir.
So your market is mobile home, not modular home? And
Correct.
why is that?
Yeah, so modular homes, it's a different business model because it's more permanent, and which is not a bad thing, but to be honest, I really don't know all of the differences between mobile homes and modular homes. I just know that the modular homes are, they're more, factory built, and I also think that they're newer. The way that they're being built. Do you know?
They have a foundation, right?
Yeah, they have more of a foundation, right?
They have to own
Yeah, there's no title either.
Retired title.
Yeah, so it's
real estate as opposed to personal property. Exactly.
correct. Yeah. So
Well, a
that's
subdivision instead of a mobile home park, basically.
yeah. But I haven't looked in. I know there's like these land lease communities with all modular homes that are fairly new, like done in the last 10 years, and it's more ran like a, like an HOA instead of they're purchasing their land, but then they're paying, for like an HOA to take care of the common areas and things like that. So. Any other?
Just, I lived at 725 Pigeon Road in Salem, Ohio for 4 years. and
Did you really?
Just around the corner from there.
Wow. We'll have to
Small
talk.
world category.
Oh yeah, it's a neat little town. I know a lot about it. You probably ate at Annabelle's a couple times.
All right, well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good job, man. We've got, a shorter and probably much less interesting presentation from me. My topic that I'm going to share about is kind of broader, and just the focus is how you could invest in the space. Just the different ways you could invest. Obviously, Andrew is diving deep in and buying parks and managing them, but maybe not many of us here might not have the opportunity or that desire. So let's just have a kind of a short and sweet discussion about this. Okay, here are the 4 ways you could invest. 3 of them are on the passive side. There are publicly traded stocks or real estate investment trusts, REITs you could buy. So you could go to E-Trade, or you call your broker and you could buy mobile home park REITs. You could invest with a mobile home park fund. There are several investment funds that gather at $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 minimum investment levels, and you can invest in mobile home park funds. Or, as Andrew is kind of articulated, you could seek out or find people or groups and be a passive investor or joint venture partner with people who are buying parks. And then finally, you can be active and buy one yourself. Diving into each of these methods, well, first of all, here's a very simple, continuum of those 4 different methods and how they fall out on the risk and reward spectrum. So obviously, as you move from publicly traded REITs, which are liquid and are, but you have very low risk, you have very low returns, completely passive, but they're liquid, to all the way to the far side where you're buying it your own, and you have all the risk and you have all the reward, and totally involved in the project and everything in between. The REITs, these are the 3 mobile home park REITs that are available. Andrew mentioned Sam Zell. He's the founder and CEO of Equity Lifestyle Properties. But those are and there's their PE ratios. from a few weeks ago. So as you can see, this space is, it attracts investment dollars, as you can see by those PE ratios. UMH is losing money, so their PE obviously doesn't really matter at the moment. Now all these pay pretty good dividends though. So these are currently paying 5 or 6% dividends. So that's one reason that even though it has such a high PE ratio, people still like them. Investing in a mobile home park fund. This is just my opinion, but here's some things you might want to consider when you're looking at different funds. You got to research the managers who are making decisions. You got to find out if they have the ability to do it. Find out if they're looking for, top of the line REIT style parks or senior parks, or they're looking for value add parks, or looking for Class C, Class D parks. You kind of want to understand what their objective is. And hopefully they have an objective. I find some funds just say, well, we're buying parks. Well, are you looking for a geography that you're going to try to scale? Are you looking for a type of quality? Are you looking for a size? What's their objective? You want to dive into the legal documents. Look at the economic and legal structure. How are they going to be paying back returns? Are they going to give preferential treatment to limited partners? Are they going to give a 6%, 8%, 10% preferred return? Are they going to get back return of capital before they start getting their equity split? What's their structure? How are you aligned with the funds? Try to get how are they managing risk? Are they taking 80% loan to value? Are they maxing it out? Are they doing interest only? Are they doing fixed interest rate? How are they, what vacancy can they have and still pay debt service? Might be a good question to ask if you're looking at a fund. And then one of my colleagues here at Overform, really wants to make sure that he's not going to invest in a slum factory. And so he wants to know, how do I know these guys aren't going to give me a bad reputation if I'm associated with investing in this fund? And there are some funds that could happen. Here's a snapshot of the 13 funds that I've researched. As you can see, I have just a brief summary of the minimum investment level, how long they've been around, and whether they're currently accepting capital. A side note, this presentation that I'm giving is part of an overall report I recently put together about investing in mobile home parks. And so this is just maybe the last, fifth of the report. So if you want to check it out, email me and I'll send you the report. Some of you got it without asking, probably might not have wanted to, but and then I think this is a really kind of a cool thing, and this is how I got to know Andrew. I basically said, hey Andrew, how do I invest with you? And here we are. But this is kind of similar to investing in a fund, but I think you want to get a little more granular. The same factors in the fund question, but I think this is going to give you the opportunity to look at the actual park that someone is buying. So you can actually dive in and look at a lot of the factors that Andrew talked about. What's their lot rent, what's the market rent, what's the demographics of the area, what's the quality, what's the vacancy, and then look at the assumptions in their financial model. Are they assuming greater rent growth than expense growth? Are they assuming a cap rate exit lower than the entrance cap rate? All these things are ways to get clues as to how the operator's thinking and how aggressive they are. And then finally, the active way, obviously, is to buy one yourself.
No thanks.
That's basically all I got. But like I said, if you want to read more about this or learn more about it, I'll send you a PDF document and you can check it out. Any more questions for Andrew or I before we just kind of?
Andrew, I've got a question. You set a goal of having $100 million by 2023. Where are you?
Right now, we're about 10. So we got a lot of work ahead of us.
That's totally doable. It's totally doable. 5 years.
A BHAG is good.
Why are REITs less risky in your mind, in your opinion?
Why are REITs less risky? Probably diversification. You know, they have a whole lot more parks under their ownership. That would be one reason. They're buying the cream of the crop. You know, they're buying 100, 200, 300 lot parks that are a 90%, 95% occupied. I mean, when you look at this industry, people aren't moving out. I mean, so you have less upside, but you're going to have stable income as long as you don't screw it up, really. You know, and then maybe I guess the REITs, if they're over leveraged, they might be getting in trouble. But that'd be one reason.
I should have started by asking what you meant by risk. I
Oh.
think you mean loss of your investment, right? Is that-
Yeah.
Or like being entitled or being held accountable for.
I meant financial risk. I think another reason they're less risky is because they're liquid. So if you decide you just want to sell it, you can sell it that day, where you can't do that with a fund or a joint venture or your own park. Another reason, maybe.
I always feel like if you can understand the individual, learn them, understand what they're doing, you're kind of more in the center, like you just talked about, that really brings the risk down. When you know the people, you know what they're doing, you know, you can pick up the phone and call them.
Sure. I would counter that, but I mean I totally agree. And I mean I'm pursuing to get involved in the direct parks, but Andrew, he gets hit by a bus, his business is probably in trouble. Where a REIT, you know, they have several leadership positions and they're not going to be affected if a key person goes. It would be all those factors probably. But yes.
Question for Andrew.
Oh,
So
Andrew, come on, buddy.
You're talking about issuing like a citation to a tenant or something or a violation.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming then with the lease, you see that as a violation of the rules and regulations, and then that's a potential cause for eviction.
It is, correct.
If it goes unpaid or if it goes uncorrectly.
Correct, yeah. So what we'll typically do is issue, give them a reasonable time frame to fix it, whether it's 24 hours or if it's, a broken window, we'll give them a week or so. And then if it's not fixed, then we'll issue a fine, per the rules and regulations. And, eventually if they don't fix the issue, then we'll go ahead and fix it usually, whether it's trash or whatnot, and then bill them for that expense. So that's what our first course of action is. And then if it's a recurring issue, then we will go ahead and do evictions, and it's different per state, but.
And that's part of your sort of cleanup method for some of these distress parks.
Exactly.
What's the
yeah.
cost per eviction?
It depends. In like Indiana, it's like $200. Ohio is more like $400. It just depends if you use an attorney or if you have the manager do it, usually.
Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you.